The first time Weston Ford saw her, she was sprinting across a cracked parking lot in heels, her coat flapping behind her like wings, and 3 men in dark hoodies were chasing her. "Felicity, stay here." Weston's tone was sharp as he turned to his 6-year-old daughter, who clutched his hand tightly in front of the gas station's sliding door. His truck sat at pump 4, half full, engine still running. "Don't move, you hear me?" Felicity nodded, wide-eyed, her favorite stuffed flamingo clutched to her chest. Weston didn't think. He ran. The woman was struggling, her heels snapped mid-step, and she stumbled hard, falling to her knees. One of the men reached for her purse, but Weston was already there, tackling the guy to the ground with a grunt. Another swung at him, he ducked, came up with a punch to the guy's jaw. The third took off running. "Get behind me," Weston said, grabbing the woman's arm. She was shaking, her lip bleeding. They backed toward the gas station. The one he punched scrambled up and disappeared with the first. The one Weston tackled didn't get far. He was still groaning on the pavement when Weston got the woman inside and locked the door. Felicity was crying. "Daddy, are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetie," he panted, crouching to hug her. "It's okay now." The woman leaned against the counter, trying to catch her breath. "You didn't have to do that. You were in danger," Weston said simply, standing and glancing at her face. Blonde hair in a messy bun, a thin line of blood along her jaw, and a look in her eyes that didn't match the tailored coat and diamond earrings, pure panic. "I couldn't just watch," she blinked at him. "Thank you." The gas station clerk peeked out from the back room, finally calling the cops. Weston turned back to her. "Are you hurt?" "No," she said, though her voice wavered. I didn't expect." "Cops'll be here soon," Weston said, glancing out the window, then down at Felicity, whose hand was still in his. "You want to sit?" The woman nodded. Weston helped her to a plastic bench near the ice machine. She held her coat closed and looked around nervously. "I'm Weston," he said after a moment. "This is my daughter, Felicity." She looked at the little girl and gave a soft smile. "Hi, Felicity, I'm Aurora." Weston raised an eyebrow. "Aurora?" She hesitated. Jones, it wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. She wasn't just Aurora Jones. She was Aurora Jones, the CEO of JLX Tech, one of the fastest-growing AI firms in the country. But right now, she didn't look like the kind of woman who had a driver and a penthouse and a private jet. Right now, she looked like a woman who just had the worst night of her life. Weston sat beside her, leaving space between them. "What were you doing out here?" he asked gently. "This isn't the safest part of town after dark." "I was supposed to meet someone, business. It went bad." She shook her head. "I didn't think it'd be dangerous. I left my driver to take a call and walked across the street alone. Stupid." Weston glanced at her shoes. One heel was gone. Her coat was torn at the shoulder. "Well, you're lucky you ran this way." Aurora looked up at him. His jaw was cut from where one of the guys must have clipped him. His flannel was stained with oil and his boots were worn, but he had the kind of face that made you want to trust him. Honest eyes. "Strong hands. You have no idea how lucky," she murmured. The police arrived 10 minutes later. Weston gave his statement, keeping Felicity close. Aurora did too, calmly and firmly, though she left out who she really was. The last thing she needed was headlines tomorrow. Once everything was done, Weston walked her to the edge of the lot. "I can wait until your driver gets here," he offered. She shook her head. "He's already on his way. I'll be fine." He nodded. "You sure?" She hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why'd you do it?" she asked. "That was dangerous. You didn't know me." He looked down at Felicity, then back at her. "I've got a daughter. If she were ever in trouble, I'd hope someone would step in." Aurora's throat tightened. "You're a good man, Weston," he shrugged. "Just doing what anyone should." "No," she said. "Not anyone would have done what you did." He smiled, then small but warm. "Well, I'm glad you're okay." A black car pulled up to the curb and a man in a suit stepped out. "Miss Jones," he said quickly. "Are you all right?" Aurora turned back to Weston. "Thank you again, truly." She bent down. "Bye, Felicity. You're lucky to have a dad like him." Felicity beamed. "Bye, pretty lady," Weston laughed softly. "Take care of yourself." Aurora stepped into the car, but as the door closed, she turned to watch Weston walk back to his truck, Felicity skipping at his side. She didn't even know his last name, but her heart was pounding. She had met a lot of men in boardrooms, at galas, in penthouses. Rich men. Smart men, ruthless men, but never one like Weston, a man who didn't recognize her name. A man who didn't hesitate to protect her, without knowing who she was or what she had. She couldn't stop thinking about him the whole ride back to Manhattan, and she didn't know it yet, but this wasn't going to be the last time she saw him, not even close. 3 days later, Weston stood under the hood of a dented Chevy pickup, sweat beading at his brow despite the early spring chill. The truck's owner was pacing near the garage entrance, mumbling about missed shifts and lost pay. Weston didn't mind he'd heard worse. He tightened a bolt and leaned back, wiping his hands on a rag that had once been white. "Try it now," he called. The engine turned over with a cough, sputtered, then roared to life. The man lit up like Christmas morning. "You're a damn miracle worker," he said, rushing over. "Just a new fuel pump," Weston replied, offering a small nod. "You're good to go." The man handed over $100 in cash with a grateful shake. Weston tucked it into the register behind the counter, then glanced at the clock. He had 20 minutes before Felicity's school let out, and the last thing he wanted was for her to stand alone on that sidewalk again. He grabbed his keys and scrawled a note for his boss, who had gone out on a parts run. He was halfway to the door when a black car pulled into the lot. Not just any car, a sleek, low-slung sedan that clearly didn't belong in a neighborhood where paint peeled from every fence and the diner's coffee came in chipped mugs. The doors were tinted. The rims gleamed. Weston froze, keys in hand, then the passenger door opened. Aurora stepped out. Not the version from the gas station. This Aurora wore a navy wrap coat cinched at the waist and boots that ate pavement like a runway. Her hair was down in loose waves, her makeup subtle but flawless. She looked like she belonged in a magazine ad for winter in Paris. Weston blinked once. "You're hard to find," she said, walking toward him. He glanced at the car. The driver stayed behind the wheel. "How did you? You told me your name," she said. "And your daughter's, that was enough." He folded his arms, skeptical. "That's not exactly a lot to go on. I know people," she said simply. "You didn't mention you were connected." "I didn't mention a lot of things," she admitted. He didn't answer. She took a cautious step closer. "I wanted to thank you properly. What happened that night? You didn't just step in. You protected me. You kept me safe." "You already thanked me," he said, voice flat. "We're good." She studied his face, then looked past him at the cracked windows of the garage, the rusting sign above the door, the oil stains on the cement. "You work here?" "I do. And your daughter, she's in school?" He narrowed his eyes. "Why are you here?" She hesitated, then reached into her coat and pulled out a check. "This is for you." He didn't take it. "I didn't do it for money," he said. "I know." "That's why I want you to have it." He looked at the envelope. "What is it?" "Enough to help with whatever you're struggling with. Rent, school fees, a better job if you want it." "I don't need charity," he bit out. "It's not charity," she replied, voice calm. "It's gratitude." He exhaled slowly, then took a step back. "You still haven't told me who you are." Aurora folded the envelope back into her coat. "My name is Aurora Jones. I run a tech company called JLX." He didn't react. "It's based in Manhattan. We specialize in AI systems mostly for logistics and infrastructure." Weston raised an eyebrow. "So you're, what, rich?" "I'm comfortable." He let out a quiet scoff. "You have a driver. You tracked me down." "That's not comfortable. That's another planet. I'm still me." "No offense, but I don't know who that is." She nodded slowly, then glanced at the clock mounted on the garage wall. "You're picking up your daughter soon?" "Yeah. Can I give you a ride?" He laughed once, sharp. "You want to come with me to a public elementary school in that car?" "I don't care what people think. Do you?" He stared at her, then finally gave a short nod. "Fine, but we stopped 2 blocks away." They rode in silence. Aurora glanced at him a few times as they drove, but Weston kept his eyes on the road. "Your daughter," she said eventually. "She seems happy." "She is. Does her mom?" "She passed 3 years ago." Aurora's voice softened. "I'm sorry." Weston nodded once, jaw tight. "It's just the two of us now." The car stopped at the corner. Weston stepped out, then turned. "You staying in the car?" She was already opening her door. "Not if I'm invited." He didn't say anything. She took that as a yes. They walked the last block together. Weston kept his hands in his pockets. Aurora watched the cracked sidewalk, unsure how she'd gone from boardrooms with venture capitalists to following a mechanic to a public school in Queens. Felicity spotted him first. She burst through the doors, backpack swinging, and launched into his arms. "Daddy," he caught her easily. "Hey, kiddo." Then her eyes landed on Aurora. "Pretty lady," Weston coughed. Aurora smiled. "Hi, Felicity, you came back." "I did." Felicity reached for her hand. "Are you coming to the pizza place?" "Pizza place?" Weston asked. "Miss Rivera said I got a good behavior sticker. We can go." He looked at Aurora. "You up for pizza in a place with sticky booths and paper napkins?" She grinned. "Absolutely." They walked the next 2 blocks together, Felicity chattering about school and her sticker chart and how she wanted a dog when she turned 7. Aurora listened, laughing more than she had in weeks. Inside the pizzeria, Weston ordered at the counter while Felicity dragged Aurora to the pinball machine. The warm scent of garlic and oregano filled the air, and Aurora felt settled, like something inside her had been quietly waiting for this. Not a gala, not a boardroom. Just a man, a little girl, and a booth with a red and white tablecloth. And for the first time in a very long time, she didn't want to leave. The next time Aurora saw Weston, he was standing in the middle of a nearly empty lot, his hands gripping the railing of an old playground slide as Felicity dangled upside down from the monkey bars, giggling like gravity didn't apply to her. Aurora stayed near the chain-link fence for a moment, watching without calling out. There was something about the way his shoulders relaxed when he looked at his daughter, something steady, rooted, like the world could tilt, and he'd still be holding her up. She stepped forward. "Didn't expect to see you out here," Weston said, turning when he heard her boots crunch the gravel. "I had a meeting nearby," she replied. "Thought I'd see if you two were around." He gave a slow nod, then tilted his chin toward the monkey bars. "You've caught her mid-circus act." Felicity waved one hand, her upside-down ponytail swinging. "Hi, Aurora," Aurora smiled. "Hi, acrobat." Weston glanced down at her coat. "You walked here. I had my driver drop me a block away. You always do that. I like to see things for myself." She paused. "Besides, I figured walking through a playground in Laubautens might get me kicked out." He gave a short laugh. "Yeah, the moms here might throw juice boxes. I can handle it." They walked to a nearby bench, Weston checking over his shoulder once more before sitting down beside her. "I looked up your company," he said after a long pause. She didn't answer right away. "JLX Tech," he continued. "You're not just running it, you built it." Aurora clasped her hands in her lap. "Started in a basement with 2 laptops and a server that overheated every other day. And now, we're in 5 countries. Working with public infrastructure, emergency response systems, even some medical logistics." Weston gave a low whistle. "That's not small stuff." "It isn't." He studied her face. "Why didn't you tell me that the first day?" "I didn't want it to matter. You thought I'd treat you different. I thought you might walk away." He didn't speak for a moment, then he leaned back, eyes on the playground. "I'm not afraid of money, Aurora. No. But you've seen what it does to people." "That I have." They sat in silence, the wind carrying the sound of children yelling in the distance. "Is that why you don't tell people?" he asked finally. "I tell the people who need to know," she said. "But lately, I've been surrounded by people who only see dollar signs. They ask about my schedule, my expansion plans, my board votes. No one asks what keeps me up at night or what I miss when I leave the office." "What do you miss?" She looked down. "Quiet, connection. A reason to be somewhere that doesn't involve quarterly projections." Weston tilted his head. "And you think you'll find that on a park bench with a mechanic and his daughter?" Her eyes flicked to his. "I haven't felt more grounded in years." Felicity came running over then, her knees dusty, a wide grin on her face. "Aurora, come push me on the swing." Aurora hesitated, looking down at her coat. Weston raised an eyebrow. "You said you can handle the juice boxes." She laughed and stood, following Felicity to the swings while Weston watched from the bench. The sun dipped lower, casting gold across the pavement. For the first time in a long while, something like peace settled over him. When they left the park, Aurora offered to give them a ride. Felicity's face lit up. "Can we, please?" Weston hesitated, then nodded. "Only if you don't mind a detour." "Where to?" I promised her we'd stop by the thrift shop. She's been saving up for a book. 15 minutes later, Aurora found herself standing between a rack of winter coats and a dusty shelf of mismatched board games, while Felicity darted through the aisles like it was a treasure hunt. Weston stood at the register, flipping through a small stack of paperbacks. "I didn't peg you for a used bookstore kind of guy," Aurora said, joining him. "I like things with history," he replied, holding one up. Used means it mattered to someone once. She picked up a worn copy of The Secret Garden, the cover faded, a note scribbled on the inside, "For Emily, who always saw the magic." Aurora ran her thumb across the words. "I used to read this under my covers with a flashlight." "Same," he said. "Except I didn't have a flashlight, just light from the hallway if I left the door open." She turned to him. "What did you want to be back then?" He gave a half shrug. "Didn't think about it much. Just wanted to make it through the next day." "But if you had," he glanced down at Felicity, who had returned with a book in hand. "I wanted to build things, real things. Not just fix what was broken." Aurora looked at him, then at the way Felicity clutched his hand, the way he tucked a few dollars into the register without blinking. "You did," she said softly. They stepped outside as the sky turned dusty purple. Aurora opened the car door for Felicity, who climbed in and immediately began flipping through her new book. Weston lingered. "You didn't have to come today, I know. But you did." Aurora looked up into his eyes. "Do you want me to stop?" He didn't answer right away. Then he stepped closer, his voice low. "I don't know what this is, but I know I haven't felt it in a long time." Aurora reached out, her fingers brushing his. "Then let's not define it. Let's just feel it." He nodded once, then stepped back, watching as she slid into the car beside Felicity. As the car pulled away, Aurora glanced back through the tinted window. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was leaving anything behind. She felt like she was finally heading toward something real. The first snow flurry of the season dusted the windshield of the town car as it pulled up to the curb outside the mechanic's shop. Weston was leaning against the garage door, arms crossed, jacket zipped to the collar. He watched the flakes swirl under the gray afternoon sky, but his attention shifted the moment Aurora stepped out. She wore a dark wool coat belted at the waist, her hair tucked behind one ear, a single leather folder in hand. There was no driver today. She'd parked herself 2 blocks down just like always. "You're early," Weston said, pushing off the door. "I left the office after the board meeting," she replied, holding out the folder. "This is for you." He didn't reach for it. "What is it this time?" "An offer," she said, "not a check." "Not a favor, a contract." Weston's brow furrowed. "I'm not looking for a handout." "It's not a handout," Aurora said calmly. "It's a proposal. JLX is expanding into sustainable transport systems. We need someone who understands mechanics and real-world application. You've rebuilt more engines than my engineers have ever touched." He took the folder, flipping it open. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. "This says I'd be a consultant." "Project manager, actually," she corrected. "Flexible hours. Remote optional, except when on-site evaluations are needed. Full benefits. And a salary that would give you options you don't have right now." He closed the folder. "Why me?" "Because you're better than this garage," she said, her voice steady. "You're better than waiting for parts that never come and choosing between overtime or picking up your daughter. You've got a mind that could build systems, not just fix what's broken." He looked down at the folder again. "I don't want to leave Felicity alone after school." "She wouldn't be," Aurora said. "JLX has a family policy. We cover after-school programs, or you could bring her with you when needed. There's flexibility." Weston shifted his weight, the snow collecting on his shoulders now. "You thought all this through." "I didn't want to offer it unless I knew it would work for both of you." He held her gaze for a moment longer, then tucked the folder under his arm. "I'll read it. That's all I'm asking." They walked together to the corner. Felicity's school let out in 5 minutes. Neither of them mentioned it, they just started walking without saying where they were going. At the crosswalk, Aurora hesitated. "There's something else I haven't told you," she said, her voice quieter now. Weston turned to her. "My father used to run a company, not like mine, smaller. Family-owned. He built it from the ground up like I did. But when things got tough, he folded, took every investor down with him, left me and my mother with nothing but debt and headlines." Weston studied her face. "I started JLX to prove I could do what he couldn't," she continued. But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I started. It became about board meetings and capital rounds and avoiding the same fall he had. You're not him, Weston said. I know. But I've spent so long protecting the company, I forgot to protect the parts of myself that matter. He was quiet for a beat. And now I'm remembering. They crossed the street as the school bell rang. Felicity came bounding toward them, a painted snowflake pinned to her sweater. Daddy, look what I made. Weston crouched low. That's beautiful, baby. Aurora knelt beside them. It's perfect. Felicity's eyes lit up. You're coming with us again. Weston glanced at Aurora, then back at his daughter. If she wants to. Aurora smiled. I do. They ended up at the little cafe across from the library, a warm, bustling place with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu. Felicity sipped hot chocolate piled high with cream, while Aurora and Weston sat across from her, the folder resting between them like a quiet promise. Aurora, Felicity asked suddenly, stirring her drink. Do you like my dad? Aurora blinked. Yes, I do. Like. Weston gave her a warning look, but Aurora only laughed. I do, she said honestly, looking at him. Very much, Felicity beamed. Good. He likes you too. Weston cleared his throat, but didn't speak. Aurora reached under the table, her hand resting over his. He didn't pull away. Later, after Felicity had taken her bath and curled up under her blanket with her new book, Weston stepped out onto the porch. Aurora followed, wrapping her coat tighter against the cold. Are you scared? He asked. Every day, she answered without hesitation. But not of this. He turned to her. What if it gets complicated? It already is, she said. But I'd rather have complicated with you than simple with anyone else. He looked at her, really looked, and saw not the CEO, not the woman from the glossy magazines, but the woman who'd pushed his daughter on a swing and read every single word of a thrift store book like it was a treasure map. You sure you're ready for all of this? He asked. I don't want easy, she said. I want real. And this, she gestured between them, feels more real than anything I've built so far. He kissed her then, not rushed, not tentative, just sure. When they pulled apart, Aurora rested her forehead against his. You're going to say yes to the offer, aren't you? I think I already did, he said. Months later, Weston stood at the entrance of JLX's New York headquarters, Felicity tugging at his hand. Now in a new coat, Aurora had insisted on buying. Inside, Aurora was finishing a press briefing her final one before the company transitioned into its next phase. When she emerged, the cameras turned, but she walked right past them, her eyes only for the man and the little girl waiting for her. Weston held out his hand. Ready? Aurora took it. Always. Together, they stepped out into the waiting city, not as strangers from two different worlds, but as something whole, something earned, something real. The snow had melted into the gutters by the time Weston stepped out of the Midtown elevator, navy button-down tucked into tailored slacks, hair still damp from the early morning rush. He scanned the open plan office with its sleek glass walls, polished concrete floors, and rows of developers already lost in code. None of it felt overwhelming, not anymore. He adjusted the strap of Felicity's backpack on his shoulder and walked toward the conference wing, where Aurora was finishing a conversation with two department heads. She looked up the moment she saw him, her expression shifting from professional to something softer. I didn't mean to interrupt, Weston said, stopping just short of her. You didn't, she replied, sliding the tablet under her arm. Is she okay? Left her with Amelia. She's got her art show today, glitter glue as far as the eye can see. Aurora tilted her head. You're not staying for it. She told me I wasn't allowed. Said parents make her nervous. Aurora laughed, shaking her head. She's turning 7 next week. I'm not emotionally prepared. She's been talking about that cake design you promised her for 2 days now. A unicorn spaceship. I've already got the bakery on standby. They stepped into her office, the glass door closing behind them. Weston leaned against the table, watching as Aurora poured herself a glass of water from the carafe near the window. You've been quiet since yesterday, she said. Weston rubbed the back of his neck. I had a call with the city's transit board. They want us to pitch a proposal for the new electric bus infrastructure. Aurora turned, eyebrows raised. That's huge. Yeah, it is. She set the glass down and walked over, folding her arms. Why do you sound like it's a problem? I've never pitched to a room full of city officials in suits. I've never even worn a tie voluntarily. She reached up, straightening the collar of his shirt. You don't need a tie. You need to be the man who rebuilt a transmission with one hand while holding a flashlight in the other. He chuckled. That happened once, and I've never forgotten it. He looked at her then, really looked. You know I never planned for any of this, right? I did. But you saw it anyway. I did, she repeated, softer now. I spent so long thinking my life was supposed to stay small, that wanting more was selfish. And now I want everything. With you. She drew in a slow breath, her hands sliding around his waist. Is that your way of saying you're finally ready to let me buy you a new truck? He laughed, burying his forehead against hers. That thing's still got 2 winters in it. I'll take that as a maybe. They left the office together, walking down Fifth Avenue toward a small cafe Aurora had discovered the week before. The city bustled around them, taxis honking, street musicians playing near the subway entrance, tourists snapping photos under scaffolding, but inside the cafe the world softened. They slid into a booth near the window. Weston ordered black coffee. Aurora got mint tea. Have you talked to your board about stepping back? Weston asked after a moment. I have, she said. I'm going to transition into a chair role, less daily management, more oversight. You sure? I'm sure, she said. I built JLX to run without needing me at the center. It's time I trusted that. He stirred his coffee. What will you do with the extra time? She reached across the table, lacing her fingers through his. Be with you, be with Felicity. Travel, paint again maybe. You paint? I used to, badly, but I loved it. He smiled. You'll have to show me sometime. She leaned forward. Only if you promise not to laugh at my sunflowers. Deal. That night, Weston returned home to the sound of Felicity's laughter echoing down the hallway. She was in the kitchen with Amelia, covered in glitter and frosting, proudly displaying a crooked cardboard model of a unicorn with silver wings. It's for my birthday, she announced. It's going on top of the cake. Amelia winked at Weston. She's got plans. When Aurora arrived an hour later, Felicity ran to her with the same wild energy as always. No hesitation, no awkwardness, just full trust. Did you bring the list? She asked. Aurora knelt and pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse. One birthday scavenger hunt, as requested. Felicity squealed. The 3 of them sat together that night, sprawled across the living room floor with paper streamers, tape, and a half-eaten bowl of popcorn between them. Aurora's blazer was draped over the back of a chair, her heels kicked off, her hair loose for once. Weston watched her laugh at something Felicity said, and something in his chest just settled. Later, when Felicity had fallen asleep on the couch, Weston carried her to bed. Aurora followed, folding back the blanket and tucking the stuffed flamingo under her arm. They stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching the even rise and fall of her breathing. You know, Weston said quietly, if someone had told me a year ago that a billionaire would be standing in my kitchen planning a scavenger hunt with my daughter, I would have told them they were out of their damn mind. Aurora smiled, slipping her hand into his. And if someone told me I'd fall for a mechanic with grease on his hands and a heart too big for any boardroom, I would have said the same. He turned toward her, brushing his fingers along her cheek. You sure you want this? All of it? There's no version of my life where I don't. He kissed her then, slow and sure, like every choice had led them here. And it had. They didn't need promises, not tonight. They'd already built something stronger. The next week, they celebrated Felicity's birthday in the park, surrounded by balloons, a crowd of friends from school, and a cake so large it needed its own table. Aurora wore jeans and sneakers, her hair in a braid, laughing as she chased Felicity through a maze of streamers. Weston watched them from a few feet away, arms crossed, a quiet smile tugging at his lips. Later, as the sun set and the last guests trickled away, Felicity curled up on a blanket with a juice box in hand, cheeks flushed with joy. She told me this was the best day of her life, Aurora said, sitting beside Weston. What about you? Aurora leaned into him. It's up there. Only up there. She tilted her head toward him. Ask me again tomorrow. I have a feeling it'll be even better. He kissed her temple. That's the plan. And it was. Every day after that was better, not because they chased perfection, but because they chased it together. With glitter glue, subway rides, business pitches, and quiet nights filled with stories and laughter, not a fairy tale, something real. And that made it everything.